Good morning. Our today's topics is trade and commerce. This topics is important for DPharm second year students, and this topics is included in a drugstore and business management syllabus in unit 1. Now, first, definition of trade. In trade, the ownership of goods or service is transferred from one person to another person in consideration of cash or cash equivalents. Trade can be done between two parties or more than two parties when the buying and selling take place between two persons. It is called bilateral trade, whereas when it is done between more than two persons, then it is called multilateral trade. Earlier, the trade was little cumbersome since it followed the barter system where goods were exchanged in return of other goods or commodities. It is hard to evaluate the exact value because of the different commodities type involved in the exchange. With the advent of money, this process became more convenient for both the sellers and buyers. Trade can be domestic as well as foreign. Domestic trade means within the border of the country, and foreign trade means across the border. Foreign trade is done through investment in security or fund and can be termed as imports and export. Now, definition of commerce. Commerce includes all the activities that help in facilitating the exchange of goods and service from the manufacturer or the producer to the ultimate consumers. Majorly, the activities are transportation, banking, insurance, advertising, warehousing, etc. that act as an aid in successful completion of the exchanging. Once the products are manufactured, this cannot reach directly to the customer. The same has to pass through a service, a series of activities. The first wholesaler will purchase the product, and with the use of transportation, the goods will be made available to the stores, and at the same banking and insurance service will be availed by him to have protection against the loss of goods. The retailer will then sell the ultimate consumer. All these activities come under the commerce head. In short, it can be said that commerce is the branch of business that helps to overcome all the hindrances that arise in the facilitation of exchange. Its major function is to satisfy human wants, both basic and secondary, by making the goods available to different parts of the country. No matter where the goods have been manufactured, the commerce had made it possible to reach the worldwide. Now, comparison chart of trade and commerce. First, basic comparison. Meaning. What is the meaning of trade? Trade means the exchange of goods and service between two or more parties in consideration of money or money source. And commerce commerce means exchange of goods and service between the party along with the activities such as insurance, transportation, warehouse, advertising, etc. that complete that exchange. Now, second point is scope. In trade, the scope is narrow, and in case of commerce, it is wide. Now, type of activity. Trade. Trade is a social activity, and commerce is a economic activity. Now, frequency of transaction. In the case of trade, it is isolated, and in the case of commerce, it is regular. Now, fifth, employment opportunity. In the trade, there are no employment opportunity, but in the case of commerce, there are lot of employment opportunities. Now, next point is link. In the case of trade, there are link between buyer and seller, and in the case of commerce, link between producer and consumer. Now, next point, demand and supply. In the case, it is represent both. In the case of commerce, represent only the demand side and capital requirement. In the case of trade, there are need more capital, and in case of commerce, less capital is needed. Now, key differences between trade and commerce. Trade is selling and buying of good and service between two or more parties in consideration of cash and cash equivalent. And commerce include the exchange of good and service along with activities like banking, insurance, advertising, transportation, warehouse, etc. to complete the exchange. Next, trade is a narrow term that merely includes the selling and buying, whereas commerce is a wide term that includes exchange as well as the several revenues generating activities that complete the exchange. Next, trade is generally done to satisfy the need of both the seller and the buyer, which is more of the social perspective, whereas the commerce is more economical in nature because of the involvement of several parties whose primary aim is to generate the revenue. Next, trade is generally a single time transaction between the parties that may or may not be reoccur, whereas the commerce, the transactions are regular and occur again and again. Next, the trade involves two parties, the seller and the buyer, who facilitate the exchange without employing anyone in between. Whereas the commerce exchange is done with the support of several departments, thereby giving them employment opportunities. Next, trade provides a link between the seller and the buyer, the direct parties involved in the exchange, whereas the commerce provides a link between manufacturer and the ultimate customer who are not direct parties with the help of several aids of distribution. Next, trade represent both the side of demand and supply, where both the parties know what is demand and what is to be supplied. Whereas in commerce, only the demand side is known. That is, what is the demand in the market and then making the available through various channel of distribution. Next, trade requires more capital because the stock has to be kept ready, that is entitled to the sale, and also the cash has to be kept ready for immediate payment. Whereas in commerce, the capital required is less because there are different parties involved who have to manage their resources individually with imposing a burden on one. Now, next, conclusion. Hence, it can be concluded that trade is the branch of commerce that deals in only the exchange of goods and services, whereas commerce are the comprehensive term that includes all the major activities that facilitate the exchange and generate the revenue for all. Thus, we can say commerce is the branch of business that keeps everything together and makes the successful completion of the distribution of goods and services. In our today's class, we came to know about trade and commerce and their basic differences. Thank you.